This is really an opportunity to focus on saving, focus on reducing debt, focus on money management, and think about our goals and how we use money to achieve our goals.
Savers with a plan can be over twice as likely to save successfully. One of the principles of America Saves and Kansas Saves is that when the plan is written down and then shared with others, you're more likely to continue to work toward your goal and to have better success achieving it. America Saves Week begins February 26th and continues through March 3rd. K-State Research and Extension, through Kansas Saves, is a partner in promoting America Saves Week. This year's campaign is built around daily savings themes, such as saving with a plan, saving the easy way, saving for rainy days, and saving to retire. On today's Sound Living, taking the pledge to improve your financial future. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. K-State Research and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish says the purpose behind America Saves Week is to focus on saving and reducing debt.
We know that Americans for several years, actually some decades probably now, have not saved as much as Americans in the past. And so this is really an opportunity to focus on saving, focus on reducing debt, focus on money management, and think about our goals and how we use money to achieve our goals.
One of the things they like to do is break things out into daily savings themes, and the first one is save with a plan. What's behind that?
Well, and that's really what I was talking about. It's looking at your goals, thinking about how much money you need, how much you can realistically put aside on a regular basis, and that's the plan part. So without a plan, we're just kind of maneuvering without full information.
We also encourage people to save the easiest way possible, and I guess really in this day and age, that's to just do it automatically.
Right. For most people, to set up an automatic savings plan can be the easiest way to do it. And that might be if you get your pay electronically, you can do a split deposit perhaps, or if you can only put it into one account, then you can automatically from your financial institution on a particular day have it moved to another account.
The idea here is you really don't miss that money.
Right. If you don't see it, you don't miss it probably. Or at least you think twice before you take it out of a savings account or out of another account to spend it.
And as you mentioned earlier, the planning comes into play here because you really need to know how much you can realistically move without moving it and then all of a sudden saying, oh, I need that money back.
Right. And again, I think the other thing that's really wonderful about America Saves and America Saves Week is this idea that small amounts over time add up. We all love the grand gesture, but really it's the small, regular activity that can make the biggest difference in the long run.
And one of the things we're trying to do is what they talk about on the third day of the program, and that is save for rainy days.
Right. So an emergency fund or a rainy day fund is just that. It's money that we put aside knowing that something sometime will happen. Could be an appliance. For example, our dishwasher just pooped out, and so we had to get a new dishwasher. Luckily we have a rainy day fund. So you just never know what it is. Often it's appliances. Could be something with a car. Could be perhaps, although sometimes we want to keep the money that we need to use for our health insurance deductibles and copays maybe separate from our rainy day fund because they're a little bit different purposes, but you might have them all in the same account.
And this would be different than what some people might consider a discretionary fund. This is really something where you're saving for more like you say, an emergency, a car repair, something breaks down with the furnace.
Yeah, discretionary is really maybe the last category of your spending plan, although I don't want to suggest that we shouldn't have discretion. I mean, to me, discretionary is kind of your fun money, right? And that can be varying amounts. And so certainly we never want anyone to feel deprived. If you're meeting your basic needs and all of your financial responsibilities, there's no reason, and planning for the future a little bit, putting some aside for the future, there's no reason not to have some fun money too.
And again, with the saving for a rainy day, you want to set some parameters on that as well. You want to have a goal to reach.
Well, yes, usually we talk about an emergency fund. We often tie it to a certain number of months of living expenses. And the reason that came about is in order to cover unexpected spells of unemployment. which makes it even harder to calculate these days when so many people are contract workers or the gig economy, and actually probably workers with those kind of arrangements, hopefully, if they've been doing it for a while, have figured out how to smooth their income so that they can meet their monthly obligations and still continue to add to their other goals.
Yeah, people who work on commissions face that same thing.
Right. And even sometimes, school teachers who work during the school year and don't necessarily have an income in the summer, so depending on what your income stream is, that is a little bit different than an emergency fund, though. So there's the smoothing the income, and then there's also money set aside for these unexpected expenses.
We also talk about saving for retirement, and that in some cases can be free money if your employer contributes.
Right. So the recommendation is always, if you need to put in a certain amount to get the maximum match from your employer, that's the quote-unquote free money. That is the no-brainer. And do everything you can to put in what you need to get the maximum amount of match. Now, for most people in the long run, that won't ultimately be all that you probably want to put aside for a comfortable retirement. It's the absolute basis, though, sort of like that's the foundation.
In this case, it's really just the getting started aspect, right? We're just trying to get people to think about these things and to take that action to at least find out about maybe a 401k or understand things a little bit further.
Right. And that's exactly right. That's why this year America Saves Week has gone to these daily themes rather than one overall theme for the week as sometimes in the past. And so when it comes to retirement, as you say, think about, are you putting in up to the maximum that you could get for your employer match? If you're already doing that, are there other ways? Again, small amounts add up over time, and retirement accounts is really one place where we see that a lot, is the small regular amounts over time, and then you get the benefit of compounding and market returns can really make a big difference in the long run.
Yeah, this is one of those where the sooner you start, the better. I know it's not something that a lot of first-time workers think about. They graduate from college, they get that first job, and they're not necessarily thinking about retirement, but as you mentioned, it's the build-up factor that makes it work.
Right, but lest anyone say, oh, I'm too late, I missed the boat. It's never too late to start, and something is always better than nothing, as is so often the case when it comes to money. And so, again, it's not always the grand gesture. It's the next step. What's the next small step that you can take on a regular basis?
And again, as we learn more, we find out that there are ways that you can make up for some of those past years as well.
Right. And if you're 55 and over, there are some of these late saver and catch-up things. So you'd want to investigate those for sure.
One of the other days they're going to talk about is saving the extra, and this might be a little bit more important this year because we're looking at the fact that there may be some additional money in people's paychecks with the new tax bill.
Right. So saving the extra is really if you get a small raise, if you have a tax refund, if you get a bonus, is, again, it doesn't mean you can't necessarily have a portion of it for fun, but then save a bit of it. And especially if you see an increase in your actual take-home pay as a result of some of the changes in the tax structure, then think about putting at least some of that aside for whatever your financial goals are. Retirement would be a good one, but also what we haven't really talked about is if you have debt, that can make a big difference too, just putting a little bit more toward your debt, student loans, mortgages, credit card debt. For sure. That's
one of those things we don't often think about because we're able to make maybe the minimum payment, but if you're only making the minimum payments, you're going to take a long time to pay that off.
Right. And so, again, just a little bit more, it really can make a difference.
The last thing they talk about is saving as a family, and this is where we kind of get to the communication aspect of money, and that's something that probably needs to happen more often within families, not only between spouses, but also between parents and children.
Right. And first of all, let's say, let's acknowledge that all families are different. All families have different styles and different goals when it comes to talking about money and who should be part of that conversation and who it's not appropriate to include in the conversation. However, having said that, there's nothing wrong with talking to your children about your savings goals. In fact, it helps them to understand that you can't always have everything right away when you want it. So this idea of deferment, the idea of planning, the idea of making choices, trade-offs. So all of these on a sort of very general level are very good to talk about with your children. Also, the other thing that can be kind of cool about it, well, there's a couple other things, is that children might have ideas. For example, if a family really wants to go on a vacation or think about a vacation and ask, the kids, well, okay, between now and summer, what can we do to come up with a bit more money so that we can do this, or this fun activity, right? And kids have great ideas, and they might surprise you. The other thing about having these family conversations is that you can then hopefully start to develop within your children or other young people that you interact with this habit of savings for them and show them that you're working on it, and maybe then ask them, well, do you want to save? How would you like to start saving for something? And help them understand within their resources that they have, that they might save some, they might spend some, they might share some.
May seem somewhat archaic now, but I can remember having to do chores around the house to make my weekly allowance, and then I had a little bit of spending cash. Is that still something that is highly encouraged?
In terms of allowances, that's always been debated, and I think it's still debated. But however children get their money, either if it's through chores or if it's through an allowance because parents, want them to learn about money, or if it later on, if it's through a part-time job or something like that, having a conversation about, okay, you have this money, and what are the parameters within the family? And again, it will vary from family to family about what you do with this money. Some families, children have money, they need to use it to buy school clothes, or other families, the money might be for more leisure type things that a child might want. It's very different from family to family, but having these conversations about what are the expectations, how much do you save, how much do you spend, how much do you share? It may be archaic, but I think what's old is new, or it never went away.
Well, and what we're trying to do is teach children as they grow up to manage money, and to learn that, you have to experience it. You have to actually touch the money and make the purchases and do things.
Right, and it's a habit. It's a skill, and I certainly firmly believe that children also may need opportunities in a limited way to fail. So, for example, if a child gets some money and it's agreed that, okay, this is money that they can spend, and they won't go out and buy something that then breaks in an hour, that's a lesson. It might be hard, but, it's just to remind the child, you had a choice. This is what you chose. This is what happened. You will have other choices in the future. It can be a hard lesson to learn, but we all have to learn it eventually.
I always found that my kids were able to understand the needs versus wants when it was their own money as opposed to our money. They seem to be a little bit more selective about what they do with their money when it's actually their money.
I think we're all like that, right? But it also helps them to then be able to understand, maybe with a bit more empathy, about parents, although again, it depends how much information you want to share about your family financial situation versus the child's individual financial situation, and how much they can actually absorb depending on their age.
America Saves Week really focuses on the educational aspect and getting people involved and getting them to take action. They want people to sign up to participate.
Right. So the action that's really desired from America Saves Week is for people to set a goal to either increase your savings for some particular purpose or to reduce debt, and then over time, over the next 12 months, work to achieve that goal.
And a lot of times, the more success you have, the more you want to do it, right?
That is so true. And so if you're realistic, and it can be something that you think is a really small goal, but again, it does build. And so this idea of setting the goal is, if you go to kansassaves.org, there's a place where you can sign up and set your goal. Obviously, you can do this yourself, but one of the organizing principles of America Saves and Kansas Saves is that when you write it down and then share it with someone, you're more likely to continue to work toward your goal and to have better success at achieving it.
That's K-State Research and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish. For more information, go to americasavesweek.org or kansassaves.org. And for help in setting up a household budget, contact the county or district extension office in your area or visit the extension website, www.ksre.ksu.edu. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. And this is the K-State Radio Network.